Hey everybody, and welcome to Glenn's Gourmet Eats. Today is our third edition of a barbecue throwdown. And what a better time to have a barbecue throwdown with ribs in the 4th of July. Today's the day before the 4th of July, and it's also the day that I moved out to Pennsylvania as well. So the 4th of July was the first day that we actually got to be involved in the community by going to the fireworks and actually participating in something in the town here. It's not kind of got us acquainted, but I'm actually really privileged that I moved out to Pennsylvania and that I'm close to a couple of the historic sites that represent the 4th of July. I'm close to Philadelphia, where the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence were written and read. And I'm close to Valley Forge, where our army during the Revolutionary War suffered a harsh winter and was trained in that spring at Valley Forge by General von Steuben, a German Prussian soldier, and trained them in the correct way to use their weapons and to become a formidable fighting machine to defeat the British. I really don't know how, without God's intervention, a bunch of tradesmen and farmers took up weapons and defeated the greatest army in the world. It still baffles me, but we did it, and we're here. And I'm also close to Washington's Crossing, where Washington crossed the Delaware on Christmas Eve and attacked the Hessians in a surprise attack and kind of turned the tide of war around for the Americans at that time, the colonies. And then a little bit further on the way is from Gettysburg, and even though that's not part of the Revolutionary War or the 4th of July, it actually did occur on July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, the three-day battle. But if you listen to President Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, he does talk about our Constitution in there and how all men are created equal. And he says, now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether this nation or any other nation so conceived in liberty and so dedicated can long endure. So that are all men really created equal? We fought a war over this, and we did come through it. And this is, July 4th, Independence Day, is one of the greatest holidays we can celebrate. But getting back to the barbecue throwdown, what we're going to do today is I'm going to have about 10 of my friends over, each from different backgrounds, and all of them like food, and we're going to be taste testing ribs today. But we're going to be tasting two different kinds of ribs. We have a spare rib and a St. Louis style spare rib, I call them, and baby back ribs. They're two different kinds of ribs, and there's many camps that love the spare ribs. There's many camps that love the baby back ribs. The big difference is the spare ribs are a little bit more marbled in fat, and as you cook them, they become a little bit more tender. The baby back ribs are not as fatty, but they have a lot more meat on them. So that's kind of the difference between them. But there's a big difference in taste, there's a difference in texture, and that's what we're going to be looking at today with these guys. I'm going to actually smoke the meats. I have 6 slabs of ribs. I have 3 St. Louis style and 3 baby backs on there, and I'm seasoning them and put everything on the same. I don't want this. I just used a little bit garlic, salt, and pepper, and just a tiny bit of rib rub on there because I don't want the taste to be thrown off. I want these guys to be able to actually taste the ribs, not the seasoning. I'm putting it on the smoker. It's about between 250 and 275. Be about 3 to 4 hours, maybe 5 hours before they're done. And then when they're done, we're gonna cut them. I'm gonna cut them open, and I'm gonna have one of the spare ribs and one of the baby back ribs, and each person will try each of those ribs and give you their impression of them and what they think. Each rib I'm going to switch. So the first guy is going to get the baby back first and the spare second. The second guy will get the spare rib first and the baby back second. So that way you don't have that like first taste and that kind of sticks with you. I want to get really a true representation of what these ribs taste like and look like, etc., etc. So I have the grill on and it's going. These guys should be here in a few hours, and we'll see you then. Okay, we're ready to go with our taste testing of spare ribs versus baby back ribs. And we're going to be looking at the initial appearance of the ribs, the bark on the ribs, the first bite. And with the first bite, we want to see what these guys think about the smoke ring in each one of these. They're going to be testing for tenderness and taste. They're going to give you a 1 to 10 score, 1 being they don't like it, 10 being it's good. 5 is like an in-between. So let me just show you the ribs here. I'm not going to tell you which ones these are because I don't want to give these guys. But those are one ribs, and these are another ribs. They have a nice bend to them. You can see they're not falling apart, but they have a good bend. So I'm going to be cutting ribs. Guy's going to be sitting here, and we're going to start.
Hi, I'm Dave Yarnell. I've introduced myself before the last couple ones, so I don't think we need to go through all that stuff. What am I looking for in a rib? I like tenderness. I like it to have, you know, the right combination of sweet and heat. Doesn't have to be fall off the bone, but I don't want you to have to gnaw on it either. So, Glenn said to mention the appearance. The appearance looks awesome on this thing and has just the right color, and it looks like the bark is just right, but let's take a bite and see. And it's got a nice pink ring that he mentioned inside. Very good. I'm gonna give that an 8. Rib number 2. Doing 2 in a row here is a little different. Initial appearance is, again, very good. Give it an 8 again. First bite. Honestly, a little bit of bristlier in there. Still good. Say 7 for bark and first bite. Tenderness, give it a 7. And taste also a 7.
Hey, this is Nick Petrone. I'm here to try some ribs today. I like ribs with a lot of flavor, a little bit of tenderness, but I always like a lot of smoke, so I know it's on the smoker and not in the oven. So today we're going to try this rib, and looks like it's got a good smoke ring, got a good bark, and it looks juicy from without even eating it. I can tell you right now, it's got a lot of, it's not dried out or anything, so here goes. Very juicy, very good rib.
Show that bite. That was a nice bite off the bone.
And it's a pretty good rib. I mean, overall, I'd give this a 9 for flavor, for the taste. Tenderness, a 9. First bite, 9. And the bark, 8. And the initial appearance, about an 8. A really good rib. Okay, so now I'm trying rib number 2.
Rib number 1, actually.
Or rib number 1, but my second rib. I'm very confusing with the numbers. This one looks similar. Good bark. It's got a little less of a smoke ring, but I still see a ring there. It looks pretty good. Maybe a little drier to the look of it. Now let's try it. This is actually more tender than the first one. The taste is a 9. Tenderness is a 9. First bite, definitely a 9. The bark's about an 8, and the appearance is about an 8. So both are really good, but I think this second one's just a little bit better overall. Okay? Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Josh. I am Glenn's son. And what I look for in a rib is something moist, something that falls off the bone, but also a little crunch in there too. So I don't want to have effort to have to rip it off the bone. You know what I mean? So this is rib number 1, right?
Yep.
All right. Definitely fell right off the bone there. Initial appearance, I'm gonna give this a 7 on appearance. Looks pretty good. The bark I'm gonna give it a 7 as well. And the first bite, that's a 9 because it fell right off the bone. That was delicious. Tenderness, it's really tender. I didn't have to make any effort to bite into it or anything. Very melted in my mouth as well. I'll give that a 9 on tenderness and taste. Overall, I'm gonna give this an 8.
Stay there.
Stay rolling.
This one's getting a tough time there. There we go.
Oh, is it still rolling? Oh, this is rib number 2. So initial appearance, this one looks a little drier than the other one, and it looks a little redder too. So let's take a bite. It is a little drier than the first one. The bark, I'm gonna give this a 6 on the bark. And first bite, it's not as tender. Very tasty though. I'm gonna give it a 7. Tenderness, I'm gonna give it a 6. It's not as tender as the first one, it still is tender though. And taste, I'm gonna give this a 7.5 on the taste.
Hello, I'm John Reinheimer. What I look for in a rib is not fall off the bone. I like to work for my meal a little bit, so I like it a little bit more, toothy. I do like the smoke aspect, and that's first look at this one here, I can see that it's got a good smoke ring, and then the bark looks wonderful. I'd give both of those an 8, and let's give it a try. That's delicious. I'd say it's not as tender as you might think, which for me that's good. So I like it. I give that an 8, and the taste I'll give it a 9. It's really good.
Rib number 1.
Rib number 1, my second. Wow, that's really really good looking. The bark I'll give a 9 look on that, and the smoke ring, boy, it looks really smoky. So let's give it a try. Wow, it's very tender. It is kind of almost coming off the bone, you can see. But even so, it's really good. The taste, I think I prefer the taste of the first one a little bit more, which was number 2. I would give this one a 7.
Is that it?
I think so.
What do you think for tenderness?
Yeah, this one I would say is very tender. I'd give it a 9.
9. How about first bite?
First bite was an 8.
8. And bark?
I think I said 9 on that, didn't I? I don't know.
I think so.
9.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Mario Piccolo, first time doing this. Looking at this rib, the initial appearance looks excellent, so I would give that a 9. The bark looks very good, also give it a 9. And my first bite, I do like it because it's very tender. I do like a tender rib. Didn't exactly fall off the bone, which I do like, but almost. So it was, I thought, excellent for tenderness. I'd give that an 8. And taste, I'd give it a 9.
What'd you have for first bite?
First bite, give it an 8.
8.
Rib number 2.
Okay, thank you. Initial appearance is a 9. Bark, I would also give that a 9. My first bite, a bit tougher than the original one, so I'd give that maybe a 7. Tenderness, 7. Taste would be an 8. Okay.
All right, I'm Heath. Know Glenn from doing some church stuff with him, but first time doing this as well. What I like in a rib, I don't know, I'm not gonna pretend to know too much about this, but I like it crispy on the outside, like it tender. I do like it to fall off the bone, not have to work too hard to get off the bone. And I do like a strong smoky flavor too. So this is rib, which one?
2.
2, rib number 2. Initial appearance, oh, that's really good. Initial appearance, a nice light like red color on it. So I think it looks good. I'll give it an 8. I don't have a relative scale yet, but I'll give it an 8. Bark, looks good. I say also give that an 8. First bite, I think it's a little more, it didn't quite, I had to work a little bit harder on it. So for me, probably a 7 on that, although it was very good. Tenderness, pretty tender, but I could see it, like I said, kind of goes with the first thing I just said. Probably give that a 7 as well. And taste was very good. I give that a 9. I'll give that a 9 on taste.
Rib number 1.
Rib number 1. All right, here we go. All right, rib number 1. Looks really good. I think I like the dark color appearance better. I don't know. So I guess I'll give, what did I give the first one? 8?
8.
I'll give that a 9 then for this one. The bark also looks really good. I'll give that a 9 as well. First bite. Yeah, that one comes right off the bone, at least for me. Maybe I bit the first one bad, but
You can try the first one again if you want to.
okay, I'll try it again.
It's up to you.
Yeah, definitely prefer the second one. I mean, it falls, that's personal, but falls right off the bone.
Try this side here.
Try this side? All right.
Yeah. A little bit more.
Has more pull to it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, interesting. So the second one, which is rib, what's the second one? Rib 1.
Rib 1.
Rib 1, okay. Second one, I like it comes off easier for me. So the first bite, I didn't give that rating yet, right?
No.
I'll give that a 9 as well.
Okay.
Tenderness, 9, more tender, but taste, I'm gonna give a 7. I like the first rib better, oddly. So, kind of interesting rating there, but yeah, thanks.
All right, my name's Bob. Rib number 1. I grew up with spare ribs that were smoked, usually for at least a day or so. My dad used to do it that way. So I like the smoky kind of rib, fall off the bone. All right, rib number 1. I like the color. Is there barbecue sauce on this? or
There's a
not?
little barbecue
A
sauce.
little barbecue sauce. What's the first one? Initial appearance. Give that an 8. Tastes pretty good. A little smoky in the back end. I like that. Bark, I'll give it an 8. First bite, I'll give that an 8. I like the tenderness. I'll give that a 9. And taste, I'll give it an 8.
Rib number 2.
Number 2. This one seems to have a little more of a barbecue sauce on it. A little thinner than the other one. Appearance, I'd give it like a 9. Just when you have to work a little bit more on it, kind of like the fall off the bone kind of ribs. Bark, I'll give this an 8. First bite is pretty good. Give this a 9. Tenderness, I'd give this a 7 because I do like to fall off the bone a little better. Taste is pretty good. I'll give this an 8.
Hey guys, how you doing? This is my name's Mike Sangiarardi, and the appearance looks super. Can you taste it? I'm so glad I came over here to eat. So appearance, I'll give it an 8. The bark, I do like it. I'm gonna give that like a 9. First bite was fantastic, so I'll give that I'm gonna be hard, 8.5. Tenderness, I'll give it, it's cooked well. I'll give it a 7.5, and taste is very good. Not super sweet. I'll give that about a 7 or 8. 7.
Rib number 1.
Initial appearance looks meaty. I'll give that a. I'm gonna give it a 7.5 for the appearance. Bark looks good. I like the other bark a little bit more. I'll give a 7 for the bark. And that first bite, I'm gonna give an 8. And the taste. I don't believe there's a lot of barbecue sauce or anything on it. It tastes like spare rib should. I'm gonna give it an 8 for the taste.
But tenderness.
Yep.
Tenderness.
Oh, excuse me. I'm gonna give it a 7.5 for the tenderness.
All right, next round we're just gonna do a comparison between 1 and 2. I'm gonna try 1 first, oddly enough. Really tender. Very good. Both very good, but I would say I have a slight preference for number 1.
Okay, I'm gonna try, this should be easy. Which one's better out of the 2 and 1? I'm doing number 2 first and seeing how this goes. Okay. Now this is number 1. They're very close, and they're both great. I just have to say that number 1 seems more juicy, so I'm going to go with that as my favorite.
So I'll be starting with rib number 1, see which one is better between number 1 and number 2. Number 1 falls right off the bone when I try to eat it, so I definitely like that. It's very tender as well. Really good. This is rib number 2. Definitely juicier. I can tell right when I picked it up, the juices were coming right out of it. Not quite as tender as rib number 1, but texture and taste, I think this one, number 2, is definitely better.
All right, comparing, this is the second one. Which I really love the flavor on this one. It isn't as fall off the bony as this one, but I'm all about the flavor, so I'm not gonna say on camera that I prefer number 2, but I do prefer number 2.
Okay, starting my taste test with first number one. And we'll take a first bite of that. Taste is excellent. Falls off the bone. Very juicy, very tender. Right now, I do like this.
Until you taste the next one.
Now I taste number two. The look is superb. Let me take my first bite of this. Also very good, but I would have to go with number one because of the texture, falls off the bone, and tenderness.
Just sitting here in front of the trays when they're so amazing. Enough to make you hungry right there. All right, number two. It's more moist, I think, than what the first one was when I had it last time. I like the fall off the bone, but I think flavor-wise, I'd go with number two.
All right, cool. Just overall impression, I guess. This is rib number one.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember when I talked about it first. That one falls right off the bone. Really like the texture of that one. And tenderness and all that. Have to work a little more for rib number two, but I think in terms of flavor, I prefer number two. In this case, weighing those, I'm just gonna go with number two, I think. Yeah.
So good. Seems a little bit meatier. Rib 2 and now rib 1. Such a difficult decision. I'm gonna go with rib 2 though. The first one that I had, just the texture and the taste though closer this time. I'm gonna go with rib 2.
All right.
All right, you're good.
All right. So I know which ones these ribs are. I can tell off the top of my head. Here, actually, these two look the same here, but this is rib number one, and this is rib number two. Rib number one is the baby back ribs. Rib number two is the St. Louis spare ribs. The difference between the two is the baby back ribs are much meatier. I think a couple guys pointed that out. The spare ribs are not as meaty, but they have a lot more fat marbling in there, which should make it more tender and more flavorful. Most of the guys I watched on YouTube that do these taste tests prefer the spare ribs. I've always preferred the baby back, but I'm going to try them again and see what I think here. This is the baby back. It's got a good crunch. Nice bite. I like the way it comes right off the bone, but doesn't exactly fall off. And this would be the St. Louis spare ribs. That's even more tender. But the flavor, number one, I think I like better. This doesn't seem as flavorful. So I'm going to go with number one. I'm going to stick with my thought that I always had along for making these. It's number one, the baby backs.